Hello and welcome to another edition of the PHNX D-backs podcast right here on PHNX. My name is Derek Montilla. Of course, I am back and I am known as your mayor of PHNX. This show, of course, is brought to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, America's #1 sportsbook app. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a 5-star review. You know, Jesse, of course, my vice mayor is a 5-star man. And that is who I'm introducing now, who's been holding it down for me while I was out with the stomach flu and COVID and everything else apparently that has afflicted me when I try to leave town for a fun weekend. It's the Thunderstick, Jesse Friedman.
Derek, your voice sounds like 80% of you. Like it's mostly there. It's not, we're not quite at full mayoral status right now.
I'm coming back online. It's taken some time to load. I definitely had quite the weekend in Washington, D.C. And let me tell you, I do not recommend getting any of this stuff. I definitely don't recommend the stomach flu. That was especially bad. But I do recommend, if you're in Washington, D.C., going and do some sightseeing, because I did enjoy that, at least in the frigid temperatures and everything else. But you know what? I'm back. You're back. We're here, Jesse. And of course, we have actual news to talk about, a lot of it, so much that we're having a hard time fitting it into the show. And let's start off with Brandon Buckingham's comment about the Baseball Writers Association should be ashamed, and I don't disagree with him. But we will get to that shortly. Of course, the big news right now is that for the first time since the owners lockout started on December 2nd, the Players Association and MLB held bargaining sessions on back-to-back days. Jesse, they did
imagine that back-to-back days.
They put in a whole week's worth of work in back-to-back days. It's kind of crazy. The one thing I'm noticing is there seems to now be a sense of urgency. Things are proceeding. Apparently, the minor league players are getting their spring training assignments. So there will still be spring training baseball, even if there's no season. Even if there's no agreement yet, it sounds like we will still have spring training baseball with minor league players, which is kind of wild to me. But as this progress or as we progress along this line, it seems to me, Jesse, like the Players Association is slowly losing ground on the owners in this negotiation process.
Well, I mean, we heard two numbers today that were not exactly close to each other, and I think give a pretty fair indication of where the negotiations are at, right?
Yes.
This had to do with pre-arbitration, basically a pre-arbitration bonus pool that players in their first few years before they hit arbitration, just an opportunity for some of the best, youngest players in the game. I think it was the top 30 that they were shooting for in terms of WAR. And they basically set up a system where the top 30 in WAR would have an opportunity to earn money from this bonus pool. The players, Derek, wanted $105 million, and the owners offered $10 million.
$10 million.
And
yes.
I am no negotiating expert, but we're a little far apart on those negotiations. But to your point, yes, the two sides are meeting, and they're meeting with consistency and some sense of urgency, which is more than we've been able to say throughout this entire process.
And let me ask you this, Jesse, isn't this kind of ridiculous for today's day and age, where we have so many players making so much money, and yet here we are arguing over $105 million pool that's going to be shared amongst the top players in the game. Players, mind you, who bring value to your product, right? Players that are going to be considered superstars because you're talking about the guys that are top 30 in WAR, right? I don't know. I mean, I guess it's kind of wild to me at times to see teams throwing out $500 million in contracts, but then the owners are also squabbling over things like this $105 million pool that seems pretty reasonable to me as far as to pay bonuses out to the top 30 players, right? Top 30 players are supposed to divide $10 million amongst them. The top 30 players already make so much damn money that you mean to tell me that like an extra 500,000 K or whatever is going to mean much to them?
Well, this is pre-arbitration. So these are players who are in their first few years. So you're not talking about Max
Scherzer,
the
superstars. Yeah,
splitting.
Right.
Yeah, that would be very dumb. But you're right.
I'm just saying,
it does feel like they're squabbling over a pretty small amount of money in the grand scheme of things. I think the reason they're doing that is because pre-arbitration players, that's where teams like the Diamondbacks, teams like the Rays, your smaller market teams really capitalize on those years, right? That's where you can have really good players that you're paying like less than $1 million a year. And
right.
100 million might not sound like a whole lot. You split that up over 30 players, that's an average of around 3 million or so per guy that you're giving, that are, it's being paid out in that pool. Which compared to their current salary is a lot. Their current salary right now, the minimum is right around 600K right now. So adding
570,500 is where it's at, right?
Right.
And
so adding
right now,
3 million onto that is pretty significant. So I guess that's where the owners are coming from on this.
But again, what you said is right. And yeah, I kind of jumped on the fact that, you're talking about younger players, but again, these are the future stars of the league, right? And
right.
I don't see a reason why, like what you said, they're not making very much money. They are going to make money, but baseball seems to be this game at times that is built on promising the payday later down the road, and then at times giving it when guys don't really seem to deserve that much money for the rest of their career or for the rest of their their production, their value, and like you said, they right now they are a bit closer on raising the minimum salary to $615,000 for players with 0 to 1 years of service time. The league previously offered 600,000. MLBPA was seeking 775,000. So MLB did not change its proposal for a set $650,000 salary for players with 1 to 2 years of service time, and $700,000 for players with 2 to 3 years of service time. So, like I said, this whole thing is about those early years, and honestly, getting the best players, I feel like, in the league, the money that they kind of deserve when they're producing at a young age early in their career, right? I sometimes when you look at the impact that some young players have had on the league, they immediately started posting, huge numbers once they got up to the majors, and that's where they stayed. And it just doesn't seem justifiable at times to pay them as little as this just because they're in their first couple of years of their contract. But baseball, the way they handle salaries, this entire process is just crazy to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It is, and we'll talk about obviously the Hall of Fame vote, but at times it feels like baseball doesn't do itself any good in promoting its own sport by having all of these fights between players and unions and baseball writers and fans and all of this stuff right now that's very contentious going on with baseball.
I think everyone is hated right now, right?
Yeah,
everyone hates the baseball Writers Association of America. We hate them. We hate the owners, right? Some people hate the players union. There's just a lot of very contentious things happening in the game right now. So you're very right. It's unfortunate.
And I don't mean to immediately say that the MLBPA is giving up, but at times, they're no longer seeking to tie free agency to player age. They've given up on that. MLB Players Union offered to decrease the revenue sharing increase they requested from 100 million to 30 million. there's a huge concession immediately.
Yeah.
MLB, meanwhile, staying steadfast in saying that they're not going to change their current revenue sharing formula at all. And management source predicts that the union will give that up in trade too, according to John Heyman. So right now, what we're seeing is it feels like the MLBPA is really sticking to their guns on the young players getting paid. And outside of that, it
Yeah.
seems like they might end up giving up on a lot of these other issues. And they're probably going to concede on a lot of these pay issues for the younger players as well. They'll get something, but definitely not what they wanted at the start of these negotiations.
Yeah, the owners, at the end of the day, the owners have a little bit more leverage here than the players do, right? I mean, they're the ones
Absolutely.
writing the checks at the end of the day. There's not really a way to change that. So I think the players are, they kind of came out shooting for the stars. So I think even from their perspective, they'd probably admit to you that, they probably didn't expect to get everything they asked for. But
Sure,
you're very
absolutely.
right that what's happened so far, the players are making more early concessions than the owners are. The owners really seem to be sticking to their guns on a lot of this stuff.
Well, and like I said, with the minor league players getting their assignments for spring training and things proceeding as far as that goes, right? I mean, a lot of times spring training are for these minor league guys anyway. It's their chance to get a
Yeah.
look at from the team. It's their chance to maybe win a spot on the 40-man roster. There's all sorts of implications for their career and their season that could be started, or, at least getting some eyes on them in spring training. I feel like we're not going to miss the 1 to 2 innings from the normal starters, as much during the spring training if they proceed with having spring training, and that gives them some more time to negotiate. And honestly, it I think that it once again puts pressure on the players. It's not alleviating pressure from the owners, because the owners can have a plan where they can almost use minor league players for the time being leading up to opening day as almost like scabs during this situation, and have the minor league players fill in and play, spring training. Right now, that's going to be the first thing I think people are going to get riled up about, is the minute we move into the end of February and the spring training schedule either is impacted or whatever. That was going to be the point, I think, where fans are going to start getting angry about this entire thing. But I don't know. This this negotiations moving along at least gives me some hope, right? It's so ridiculous to say, look, we're excited that they talked in back-to-back days, but really they've been dragging their feet on this process so much that it actually is exciting that they've met for 2 consecutive days this week.
Well, they realized, Derek, the January 28th is only 3 days
Oh
away.
my God,
So they're
Jesse.
starting to pick up the pace.
I can't wait for this. I can't wait for this day to be passed so we don't have to listen to this crap anymore.
I'll have you know, I don't know if you listened to the show yesterday, Derek, with our pal Jeff Weiser, but I might have made some concessions to Jeff that I don't know if I could. I don't think I would have the strength to make those concessions to you live on the air. So,
I understand.
yeah, maybe we'll get there someday. But anyway.
Maybe. But Jesse, just as a reminder to you and to everybody else out there, there's only 4 teams remaining in the NFL playoffs right now, Jesse. And that means only 4 teams left for you to bet on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Was an insane weekend. Even though I was sick and I was bedridden, it was a great weekend to be bedridden, because I got to watch some of the most amazing football games. I heard on yesterday's podcast, because you think I don't listen to this when I'm not here, but I absolutely listen. I heard your concession. I hear everything. I know everything about you, Jesse Friedman. And I know that you missed out on those games because you were out doing crappy weekend crap. And I'm sorry, because they were amazing. It really was, like, especially if you're a fan of football, but unfortunately, like us, Arizona Cardinals fans, your team was out of it. You didn't really have a personal stake in it as much, so you probably didn't get your heart broken. It was a weekend of just exciting games. But if you were a fan of one of the teams that lost, I'm sure this weekend wasn't as great to you as it was to the rest of us. I completely understand. Get back on your feet by counting down to Super Bowl 56, with new customers getting 56-1 odds on any team over at the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Bet just $5 and get $280 in free bets if your team wins. Not a new customer? Of course, you can do what I do and experience the conference championships with same-game parlays. You can buy multiple bets from the same game for a bigger payout. The more legs you add, the more money you can win. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. Best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Remember that pro tip: when you go into the DraftKings Sportsbook app, use that single game parlay drop down menu, and there are all sorts of fun additional legs you can add that wouldn't normally be there if you were just trying to straight bet. So make sure to add some legs, get your payout as big as possible, and win yourself some money on the way to Super Bowl 56. Don't forget that the promo code is PHNX for those 56-1 odds at the DraftKings Sportsbook app, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. 21 and over only, Arizona only, gambling problem, dial 1-800-NEXT-STEP. New customers only, eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. And Jesse, I don't think my voice is going to make it.
Well, hang in there, Derek, because
I'm
I
trying.
think the thing that is on people's minds the most today, we haven't even talked about yet. So
We have not.
I
And
hope
let's
you
get
have
into
saved something, Derek.
I definitely have saved a lot of yelling, and I'm going to leave it all on the court. I'm going to leave it all on the court. Motion says, I heard someone say a few years ago that only writers who were writing for the MLB back when the players who are on the ballot were playing should be the only ones who are able to vote. And I agree. That's a pretty interesting concept. And I don't
that makes too much sense. That makes too much sense.
Entirely too much sense.
Baseball can't do that.
The vote is official. David Ortiz is a first ballot Hall of Famer and is the only player elected in this year by the Baseball Writers Association of America. Jesse, no surprise here, but
yeah, not really.
Thoughts? Upset? Anger? Do you have anything left? I mean, again, is it even surprising to you?
I wouldn't say I'm not surprised, but I still think it's important that we talk about how much of an issue baseball has with this process right now. I mean, we all know that Barry Bonds, there's a pretty clear allegation regarding his usage of steroids that is out. But David Ortiz is not exactly clean in that regard either. And
that's the weirdest part about this whole situation.
That's been the outcry across baseball today, and I couldn't agree more with that. It doesn't make any sense. From a numbers standpoint, Derek, I'm actually curious, Derek, if you were to guess who is number one in Major League Baseball in the history of baseball in WAR, who would you guess? You're probably gonna get it right. Just guess the first name that comes to your mind.
Babe Ruth.
Babe Ruth. There you go. So Babe Ruth is number one on the list. Number two on the list is Barry Bonds. Number two is literally Barry Bonds. Number three is Willie Mays. And number 183 on the list is David Ortiz.
Oh my God.
And yet somehow today, and this is not in any way to take away from David Ortiz. I think he's a pretty worthy first ballot Hall of Famer. Like he is, I mean, he has been an excellent player in this sport.
You hit the nail on the head. I agree with you 100% because that's what I feel like I'm doing when I'm making this argument. That's what I feel like I'm doing.
Right,
I feel like I am taking away from David Ortiz's day. I feel like I'm trying to, muddy his history and his past. I love David Ortiz, and I am a Diamondbacks fan first and a Yankees fan second. And I will say that because I was raised. I'm Puerto Rican. It's like it's like a default setting for Puerto Ricans to immediately root for all New York teams or Miami. One of those two. That's your choices. But
I would have guessed Miami, but we'll let it slide, Derek. We'll let it slide.
I appreciate that. But I will say that I've talked about it in the past and like how definitive in my life how changing the 2001 World Series was for me and everything like that. But my point is that I shouldn't like a Boston Red Sox. I shouldn't. I just shouldn't. It should be part of my DNA tattooed inside of me that I don't like a Boston Red Sox. And I will just say that David Ortiz is a great individual. He's a great guy. He is one of the best. Oh, yeah. Brandon Buckingham says he may have to unsubscribe now that the mayor's a Yankees fan. Not really. I was trying to confess, truths here, but whatever. I guess I thought we were in the trust tree, but I guess we're not in the trust tree.
Keep that crap to yourself, Derek. We don't want to hear about your fandom for other cities. That doesn't fly around here.
But my point being is that I think David Ortiz is getting in quite a bit on the success that he brought to a franchise that completely changed that franchise, right? The Boston Red Sox went from a joke to a team you couldn't feel safe having a lead against. The Boston Red Sox turned into a multi-time World Series champion. And you can't deny what he brought to that team. But that's such a weird thing when people want to take factors like that in selectively, right? It's like, yeah, he didn't have the best numbers, but he had good enough numbers. And, his career stats and everything he did for a while there, the way he led the team, all that's great. But, again, where is it that he is okay, even though he has a PED incident against him, and then these other guys aren't, despite the fact that, like, did Barry Bonds ever test positive, or was it just, it's always the scandal of him covering up the fact that he
Yeah.
used PEDs and then get caught up in that whole
Yeah.
the Florida, clinic thing. But the especially like when you talk about Schilling, who's just didn't get in based on kind of being a piece of shit and telling people he
Yeah.
didn't want to
Yeah.
be elected into
Right.
the Hall of Fame, right? But like, these are just weird reasons to me to not elect people in when the purpose of the hall is to honor the best players in the game, and I
Mm.
think that's the argument going around everywhere today. It's not taking away from David Ortiz as much as saying it's ridiculous at this point. Barry Bonds, Clemens, Schilling, they're all going to have to get in through the what is it? It's like the era
Yeah.
committee or something like that.
Yeah, there's a committee that meets during the winter meetings that gives them still a shot this December. Yeah.
And they're absolutely going to vote all of them in, because it would be preposterous not to. And the point is to have that committee as a catch-all for these kind of situations where they kind of want a little bit more unbiased, people deciding rather than writers. Josh
Yeah.
Rowich, who was a huge part of the Arizona Diamondbacks foundation or organization, is the president of the Hall of Fame now, and
Yeah.
it's kind of incredible to me because I love Josh Rowich. He is one of
Yeah. Great
the
guy.
best people I've met in baseball, period. And the fact that
Mm.
he's doing this now doesn't surprise me at all. He's an ambassador for the game. He is one of the warmest people I know, and he loves baseball more than anybody I've ever met. Josh Rowich was saying today how, if they take away from the writers, because the writers were even saying, like, hey, give us some direction on this stuff. Like, how do you want us to feel about PEDs? How do you want us to feel about that? And the Hall doesn't really want to provide direction. Their view on it is, if we provide direction to the writers on how they should feel, what their voting criteria should be, whether morality should or shouldn't factor in, takes that out of the human element, and it just puts it right with the Hall anyway. So if they're going to direct them on who to vote in, then the Hall could just place people in the Hall of Fame without having the baseball writers vote, right? Like, this
Mm.
human element is part of the Baseball Hall of Fame, and it has been since the beginning. The problem is the controversies have changed over the years, and what is and isn't a
Yeah.
controversy, and what is and isn't morally right. And that's where I think the game of baseball has changed. Plus, it's hard to look at the Baseball Hall of Fame at times and say that the best players are in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Freddie Lindstrom is in the Hall of Fame. Freddie Lindstrom averaged 212 hits and 17 home runs in the 1928 to 30 seasons. And then he only played 2 full seasons because of ankle and back problems. Why is that guy? Are you kidding me? That guy's in the Hall of Fame? Like, there are some people in the Hall of Fame that when you start looking up old stats, career batting averages of 249, WARs of like 1, stuff like that. It's kind of, and a lot of them are elected in by the Veterans Committee, because the Veterans Committee tends to acknowledge some of those performances that, the baseball writers aren't going to. And
Yeah.
and honestly, when you start going through the list of some of the most obscure players in the Baseball Hall of Fame, most of them have been voted in by the Veterans Committee, whose job is to make sure that, these guys don't get missed. So I think at the end of the day, that's probably what we're going to see. But I just wonder, is this type of critical thinking when electing someone into the Hall of Fame partially responsible for this current state of the game's popularity? Like, all of this arguing, all this fighting, the owner, the lockout, the Hall of Fame, how is any of this helping the game of baseball right now? It just, if I was a casual fan, I feel like at times I would easily just walk away from this whole mess that's going on right now.
Mm. Yeah, it's hard to know where to place the blame here, right? I mean, we've placed the blame on Major League Baseball for a number of things when it comes to the lockout situation and all of that. It's easy to blame the owners. It's easy to blame Rob Manfred. But yeah, here, I mean, it's just the writers. And this is nice for us, Derek, because neither of us are currently members of the Baseball Writers Association of America. So we can kind of be the innocent outsiders who just get to point fingers at people and whatnot.
I like
But
doing
I
that.
mean, yeah, that's really we'd rather do that anyway. But I mean, potentially down the road, potentially one or both of us are trying to make these same kinds of decisions. And I do want to point out this is very, very hard. I mean, there's a lot of deserving players on the Hall of Fame ballot every year, and it's really tough to hold everything in balance and make sure that everyone gets the votes that they deserve. So I in some ways kind of sympathize with the writers trying to make a decision that at times feels just very difficult. I don't think it's obvious, if you're giving more votes to Bonds and you're giving more votes to Schilling and Roger Clemens and Sammy Sosa, you're going to have to get those votes from somewhere, right? You're going to have to take them away from other people. And that other people are going to get mad over the votes that are taken away from the other guys that are now no longer pulling in as many. So you're never going to make everyone happy in this process. But
Yeah.
I think I think there's no way getting around the fact that this was not a good day for baseball. And Jeff Passan actually wrote about this today or yesterday on ESPN, and he wrote an article that was kind of along the lines of what you said in our last live show, that it is important just for the story of baseball that the story of the steroid era gets told, and that the people who are at the forefront of that era of this game are still represented in the Hall of Fame, even if it means being upfront about what they did and upfront about, the fact that Barry Bonds took this game to a level that it was never intended to go, right? He took this way too far in terms of what he was willing to do. That's something like what Jeff Passan said. And I think it's totally correct. I mean, it's this idea that those stories should still be told. They should still be in the Hall of Fame because of the greatness of those players. But we just have to also be willing to be forthright about what happened. And unfortunately, that balance wasn't really struck properly here.
What's wild to me, Jesse, is the one thing about baseball is I've read so many books about how people have cheated over the years, right?
Yeah.
It's the one sport that I can recall, and not just reading books historically about it, but experiencing it in my lifetime, that how cheating just swung from one thing to the next, right? Corked bats was the big cheating when I was like first really getting into baseball as
You're
a kid.
right. Baseball has more cheating culture than
Yeah,
other
than
sports do.
any
It's
other
weird.
sport. There
Yeah.
is an article I read about like greenies, and I've always heard about greenies, right? And greenies was like a drug that players used to take, like an upper before
Right.
a game. Greenies were meth. That's what greenies were. They were methamphetamine mixed into clubhouse coffee, is what they were. And it's just wild to me to think that a sport that at one time had players taking meth before the games to get prepared is mad about Barry Bonds and other players using more sophisticated forms of science that are way healthier than doing cocaine or methamphetamine to get ready for a game. And they are going out there and, they they're calling this guy a cheater somehow. It's wild. Doc Ellis threw a no-hitter on LSD. You know what I mean? I have a baseball card commemorating it right next to me. There are a lot of weird things with drugs and stuff. Willie Mays and Hank Aaron took greenies before every game, I guess. I heard that too. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to throw out any accusations, but what he's saying is the stuff I've read as well. It's just a weird part of the culture. So it seems weird to me now to start focusing on what it seems like the guys you couldn't catch. Like the guys that were always one step ahead of, just because that's what happened with David Ortiz, right? David Ortiz got popped. It happened, and then he moved on with his career. I think at times the elusive nature of some of these guys and their ability to always stay step ahead and not get caught is at times what infuriates people and might have that aura around them. I don't know. I can't explain it, because again, you could say what you want about certain guys. Schilling again requested people don't vote him in. So would you be that surprised that they didn't?
Schilling didn't
Barry
even cheat,
Bonds,
man. He didn't
I
even
know
cheat.
Schilling didn't even cheat. He just talked shit.
Yeah.
He's just on the other side of a lot of people's, he's the opposite of how a lot of people view and think. And I understand. Like Brett Johnson says here, being a racist and taking greenies equals Hall of Famer, but steroids and talking mean to press, no Hall of Fame for you, sir. Yeah, that's definitely what it's starting to feel like, you guys. And I think that sucks, but we'll see what happens going forward. I know that the veterans, that veterans committee will most likely not leave those guys out. And that includes Kurt Schilling, who will most likely go in wearing a Diamondbacks hat. And
we'll be in a very weird place come December if that happens. And we're in like this celebration mode, but we don't really know if Kurt will even be happy about this. And some Diamondbacks fans probably won't be too happy about it either. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there. That'll be an interesting time if that happens.
And that's still such a weird thing to me. But this whole thing, the most important thing though, I think here is today our one of our favorite pitchers, Zach Gallen, tweeted this out.
Yeah.
And Zach Gallen said, by the way, the amazing profile picture update there. Growing up means realizing Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens should be in the Hall of Fame. And it's really that simple. It really is. But you guys can go over to our phnxlocker.com. Don't forget about that. We have all sorts of amazing t-shirt designs. I wore them all weekend long in DC and got quite the looks, mostly hateful looks from people that root for the opposite teams, but it didn't matter. I was enjoying myself.
T-shirts when it was like 25 degrees outside or whatever was happening over
I
there?
didn't make good decisions, Jesse. I did not make good decisions.
I told you how you got sick.
I ended up with stomach flu and COVID. So yeah. But you can head to phnxlocker.com and pick up any sticker pack for just $5 and grab any t-shirt for just $29.99 and be the envy of all of your friends. And you know what? Then don't wear it out in frigid temperatures in foreign cities where you could possibly get sick with COVID like I did. But I'll tell you this much too. If you haven't already done so, please check out gophnx.com. If you haven't signed up to become a member, if you are sick and tired of all of that other coverage you get on Valley Sports, you can expect in-depth features, film breakdown, exclusive videos, discounts over at the phnxlocker.com, and the most engaging discussion over on our members-only Discord. Become a PHNX member and unlock a world of Arizona sports coverage you never imagined possible. Head to gophnx.com and you can become an annual member. You'll get that free t-shirt over at the phnxlocker.com. Or take the month-to-month option and you'll get your first month for just 50 cents for signing up. It's time to redefine what it means to be an Arizona sports fan. It's time to go PHNX. And we appreciate you guys tuning in. Obviously, you can get Jesse and myself on Twitter. I am at cap_caveman with a K, and I am still alive. I'm not dead yet, bitch. You can get Jesse at Jesse N. Friedman. You can get our show at PHNX_DBacks. But of course, all roads lead to at PHNX_sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Please leave us a review if you're listening to us on your favorite audio podcasting app and subscribe to us there. Then jump over to YouTube, or if you're in YouTube, either way, subscribe to us there as well and sign up for notifications. That way you don't miss any of the amazing content coming out from the PHNX team. Look, the Cardinals, they let us down. But let's be honest. What we saw in that divisional round, they would have gotten smashed there. So let's just be happy. Let's just be happy the Suns are as good as they are. Let's hang on to them with both hands for right now. And let's hope the Diamondbacks can somehow claw their way back up to 500. We'll see what happens this season. I know I'm still holding out hope. But that's just for the season to happen, let alone what the Diamondbacks will do. We appreciate you guys so much on checking out the show. On behalf of Jesse and myself, we thank you guys. And remember, kids, baseball is fun, but it's so much more fun when you get over your own goddamn feelings and elect the people that should be in the Hall of Fame into the Hall of Fame.